So there is a moment during the old piece reveal at TennoCon that gives us this image, the blinded face of Archimedean Margulis, blinded by a Tenno that couldn't control their powers, but even when blinded, she didn't turn her back on the Tenno, she forgave and continued to try to care for them. Now, showing this image has opened up a lot of possibilities, right? They wouldn't add this image into the reveal if it didn't have some kind of foreshadowing, which Rebecca kind of roughly, or I guess briefly hinted at when I interviewed her and Megan over a week ago. We are more than likely going to meet Margulis, or a version of Margulis, during the old piece update, or at the very least have some kind of flashback to who she was. Now, if you've played Warframe long enough, you will know that that is a huge moment, because she died sometime around the Old War period, and then of course the mimic Nata arrived, imprinted some of Margulis' memories and became Lotus. So if you're going to meet Margulis, who else from that time period might show up during, I guess, that old piece recap? I feel like DE has a serious opportunity here with important story characters from the past that we could see just even for a minute or two, but I'll get to that in a minute. Margulis is such a significant figure in Warframe's lore. Us going back to the old piece and getting some solid story about her around that time when she was alive would be absolutely amazing. But remember, she was probably on the verge of being executed by the Seven for the crime of apostasy, so bear with me while I fumble through the game's lore segments and give a very bite-sized version of who Margulis was. Not Nata or Lotus, just the old war Margulis. Feel free to share your thoughts as well in the comment section below, because I'm not a lore nut, I'm kind of just looking up the little bits of fragments from codex entries over the past few years. And of course there's a good chance that I've forgotten some of it. Now, when the Orokin Empire was, I guess, at its peak, or during the time of the Old War, full of ornate towers and unimaginable grandeur, it was probably already in the process of starting to rot at its core. At the centre of all of this would have been Archimedean Margulis, a scholar who had the audacity to care for a group of terrified children, those originally trapped on board the doomed Zariman 10-0. Now, the children had returned from the void with uncontrollable powers, powers that led to the Orokin elite to call for their execution. They seen them as monsters, but Margulis spoke about their humanity and argued against their destruction. She chose compassion over command and became their surrogate mother, if you will. Margulis saw frightened children suffering from a psychic storm and tried to help them through the creation of transference. So she envisioned transference as a type of therapy, a means to give the Tenno a mental anchor and a stable surrogate body through which they could exist without their uncontrolled powers, I guess, harming others around them. Now, while Margulis did intend this as a rehab or as a therapy, the Orokin quickly saw its potential as a weapon. In their eyes, if these children could pilot surrogate bodies like Warframes, then they would be incredibly invaluable. So what she built as therapy became the Orokin's main weapon system during the Old War. And in the end, it won the Old War for them, right up until the event known as the Collapse, which I might make a separate video on. But Margulis, she spoke to Ballas about healing the children, about how maybe these children were meant to save them, but in the eyes of the Orokin elite, her rebellion was seen as unforgivable. They demanded that the Tenno be destroyed, and of course she refused. She openly defied the Seven, which was the ultimate crime, a betrayal of the Golden Law. Apostasy was treason against not just the rulers, but against everything that the Empire stood for, and the sentence for that, of course, was death by Jade Light, a weaponized, searing flash of pure annihilating energy said to completely unmake a person, body and soul. It wasn't just death, it was complete erasure, a cleansing fire meant to wipe away the offender's existence from the perfect, unblemished image of the Empire, as if they never existed. So the executors, the Seven, condemned her, and the man obsessed with her, Executor Ballas, delivered the sentence of death by Jade Light. Now, during her trial, they offered Margulis a way out, to renounce her beliefs, to abandon the Tenno and submit to the Empire's judgment. This would mean agreeing that the Zariman children were in fact dangerous abominations and that she was consenting to their destruction, and admitting that her compassion had been a misguided error. But Margulis refused. Her defiance wasn't loud or violent in any kind of way, it was a kind of resolute defiance. She wouldn't call the Tenno monsters and she wouldn't betray them just to save herself. So that refusal sealed her fate, and of course she was executed as a result. She stood before the Jade Light and chose death over surrender, and in the end she only really wanted to help the Tenno, and the Orokin made her pay the ultimate price. Something that I'm sure might have played a bit of a role in the Tenno eventually deciding to rebel, I think centuries later, and kill all of the Orokin during that famous collapse. But, as I was saying earlier, the fact that they are going to bring us back to a time where we might get to meet Margulis and who she was, even as blinded as she was because of that incident with the Tenno that couldn't control their powers. There is other characters that were alive during the Old War, like Orokin, better known as the Beast of Bones, or eventually he got turned into a Cephalon. Ordis, who of course annoys us on a daily basis. He wasn't a Tenno or a Warframe or an Orokin noble, he was a soldier infamous across the system for, I guess, being a bit of a killer. His brutality and cunning made him a nightmare for any of the Orokin's empires, and a lot of people during that time feared him. But he is a character that the Warframe community has kind of latched on to and has kind of been asking for more story in relation to Ordis from back then, so who knows, maybe we might see something about him. And then of course we have Jade and Soren, or Stalker, who was also one of the low-ranking Orokin guards around that time, around the time of the Old War, and of course the collapse. He remembers the night of the Naga drums when Tenno turned on the Orokin masters, and more than likely if he was an Orokin guard he probably stood in on some of the Jade executions as well, but that's just, I guess, guesswork. So we could also see them when we go back into the old piece. And of course you have Ballas and some of the Orokin 7 as well, like Executor Tuval, who was eventually killed by Varuna during the collapse of the Orokin Empire, or Executor Karish, Executor Avantis, and Nihil the Glassmaker from one of our previous Nightwaves, and plenty of other characters that I probably just can't think of right now off the top of my head. But let me know in the comment section below who you would like to see showing up during the old piece when we do finally get to step foot in that later on this year. I myself genuinely can't wait to see if Margulis is there during the old piece, but at the same time I can't wait to see exactly what causes the fallout between Adis and the Tenno, and what turns the old piece back into the Old War and I guess escalates things even further. I also can't wait to see more of the Dax separatists. But like I said, let me know in the comment section below what you're looking forward to the most with the old piece, and if I should maybe make a video on the night of the Naga drums of the collapse of the Orokin Empire. Have a great day either way, have a great week, and as always, thanks for watching.